The late-night drive home is usually my sanctuary, a quiet transition from the chaos of grading papers and managing a classroom full of energetic 10-year-olds to the peaceful solitude of my small cottage. Tonight, however, the silence feels heavy, almost ominous, as my old sedan hums along the deserted rural road. The moon, a sliver of silver, offers little light through the dense canopy of trees that line the asphalt, casting long, dancing shadows that play tricks on my peripheral vision. I grip the steering wheel, my knuckles white, a strange unease settling deep in my stomach, a premonition I can't shake. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and pine, a familiar comfort that now feels tainted by an unseen tension, a whisper of something profoundly wrong just beyond the reach of my headlights. Suddenly, a blinding flash of light erupts in my rearview mirror, followed by the deafening shriek of tires fighting for purchase on the pavement. My heart leaps into my throat, a frantic bird trapped in my chest as I instinctively swerve, narrowly avoiding a collision. The sound of tearing metal and shattering glass slices through the night, echoing like a gunshot. I slam on my brakes, the car skidding to a halt, my body jolting forward against the seatbelt. My breath catches, held captive by the sheer terror of the moment. Through the dust and the lingering smell of burnt rubber, I see it, a sleek black SUV, now a twisted wreck of steel and shattered windows, half submerged in the ditch beside the road, its remaining headlight blinking erratically like a dying eye. My first thought is to call for help, to dial the emergency services, but my hands are shaking so violently that my phone slips from my grasp, clattering uselessly on the floorboard. Adrenaline floods my veins, a cold electric current urging me forward. I have to check, I tell myself. Someone might be hurt. Pushing open my car door, the cold night air bites at my exposed skin, but I barely notice. The silence that follows the crash is even more terrifying than the noise itself, a heavy blanket that smothers all other sounds, amplifying the frantic beat of my own pulse in my ears. Each step towards the mangled vehicle feels like walking into a nightmare, a scene ripped from a movie, not my quiet, predictable life. As I approach the wreckage, the acrid smell of gasoline and scorched metal fills my nostrils, making my stomach churn. The driver's side door is crumpled inwards, a grotesque accordion of steel, but through the shattered window, I can make out a figure slumped against the steering wheel. He's a large man, dressed in an expensive dark suit, now torn and stained. His head is bleeding, a dark sticky patch spreading across his temple, and his breathing is shallow, ragged. My medical training, a distant memory from a first aid course I took years ago, kicks in. I have to get him out, the thought screams in my mind, before the car catches fire, before it's too late. The urgency of the situation overrides my fear, replacing it with a singular, desperate focus. With a surge of strength I didn't know I possessed, I managed to pry open the passenger door, the metal groaning in protest. The man is heavy, his body a dead weight, but I pull, grunt, and strain, dragging him slowly, painstakingly, away from the twisted metal and the growing puddle of fuel. Each inch is an agonizing effort, my muscles screaming in protest, my lungs burning. His expensive watch glints dully in the faint moonlight, a stark contrast to the grim reality of his situation. I can feel the warmth of his blood on my hands, a visceral, terrifying sensation that makes my skin crawl, but I push through the revulsion, driven by the primal need to save a life, any life, even if it belongs to a stranger on a dark, isolated road. Finally, I manage to pull him a safe distance from the car, laying him gently on the damp grass by the roadside. His face is pale, his features sharp and defined even in unconsciousness, a man clearly accustomed to command. I check for a pulse, my fingers trembling against his cold neck, relieved to find a faint, steady beat. As I try to assess his injuries, his eyelids flutter open, slowly, deliberately. His eyes, a startling shade of dark, piercing blue, fix on mine with an intensity that sends a shiver down my spine. A gaze that seems to see right through me, past the fear and the adrenaline, into something deeper, something unsettling. The world seems to shrink, the vast darkness of the rural road disappearing, leaving only his gaze and my own terrified reflection. A low groan escapes his lips, and he tries to push himself up, wincing in pain. I gently press him back down, murmuring reassurances, telling him to stay still. He ignores me, his eyes still locked on mine, a strange mix of gratitude and something else, something possessive, swirling within their depths. His voice, when it comes, is a gravelly whisper, rough with pain but laced with an undeniable authority, a tone that demands obedience. He reaches out a hand, his fingers brushing my arm, a touch that feels less like a thank you and more like a claim, a brand. The words he speaks next are not a question, not a plea, but a chilling declaration, a sentence passed down from a hidden court. Now you belong to me. The words hang in the cold night air, heavy and absolute, echoing in the sudden, profound silence of the rural road. My breath hitches, caught somewhere between my lungs and my throat, as a cold dread washes over me, far deeper than any fear the crash itself had inspired. The moon, now fully visible, casts a stark, unforgiving light on his face, revealing a faint, almost imperceptible smirk playing on his lips. This isn't gratitude, I realize with a sickening lurch in my stomach. This is something far more dangerous, far more binding, a silent contract forged in blood and fear under the indifferent gaze of the stars. My life, as I knew it, just ended, and a new, terrifying chapter has begun, one I never asked for, one I don't know how to escape. The morning after the crash, the world feels muted, as if a thick pane of glass separates me from its vibrant colors and familiar sounds. I sit at my kitchen table, a lukewarm cup of coffee growing cold in my hands, staring blankly at the chipped ceramic. The memory of his words, "Now you belong to me," plays on an endless loop in my mind, a sinister melody that drowns out the chirping birds outside my window. My hands still bear the faint, rusty scent of his blood, a phantom reminder of the night's terrifying events, a stain that no amount of scrubbing seems to erase from my skin or my memory. Every shadow seems to hold a hidden threat. Every creak of the old house sounds like an approaching footstep, and the quiet hum of the refrigerator feels like a low, menacing growl. I try to rationalize it, to tell myself it was the shock, the pain, the delirium of a man who had just survived a horrific accident. He didn't mean it, I whisper to the empty room, but the words feel hollow, unconvincing even to my own ears. There was a cold certainty in his eyes, a predatory glint that spoke of power and control, a look that had nothing to do with gratitude or confusion. It was a declaration, a statement of ownership, and it has burrowed deep into my psyche, planting a seed of fear that is rapidly blossoming into full-blown panic. My routine, once a comforting anchor, now feels like a flimsy veil, easily torn away to reveal the terrifying new reality lurking beneath its surface. The school bell, usually a welcome sound, now rings with an unsettling urgency, pulling me back to my responsibilities. I manage to get through the day on autopilot, my smile feeling stretched and artificial, my answers to the children's questions mechanical. My colleagues notice my pallor, the dark circles under my eyes, but I brush off their concerns with vague excuses about a sleepless night. How could I explain? How could I tell them that I pulled a man from a wrecked car, only for him to claim me as his property? They would think I was mad, or worse, that I was somehow involved in something illicit, something dangerous. The secret weighs heavily on my shoulders, a suffocating burden that isolates me even in a room full of people. Later that afternoon, as I'm packing up my classroom, a sleek black SUV, identical to the one from the crash, pulls up outside the school. My breath catches in my throat, a sudden sharp pain in my chest. My heart pounds against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of pure terror. Two men, tall and impeccably dressed in dark suits, emerge from the vehicle. Their movements are fluid, almost silent, their faces impassive, like statues carved from stone. They scan the school grounds with an unnerving intensity, their eyes missing nothing, their presence radiating an aura of quiet menace. I duck behind the blinds, my body trembling, praying they don't see me, praying they aren't here for me. They don't enter the school, not directly. Instead, they lean against the polished black vehicle, their gazes sweeping over the departing parents and children, a silent, watchful presence that chills me to the bone. It's a display of power, a subtle intimidation, A clear message delivered without a single word. They are waiting. For whom, I don't know. But a cold certainty settles in my gut. This is connected to him. This is a direct consequence of my act of kindness, my impulsive decision to help a stranger. The world I thought I knew, the safe, predictable world of lesson plans and parent-teacher conferences, has been irrevocably shattered, replaced by a landscape of shadows and unspoken threats. I wait until the last child has left, until the last parent's car has driven away, until the school parking lot is eerily empty. My hands are clammy, my palms slick with sweat, as I finally gather the courage to leave. As I step out of the school building, the two men are still there, their figures silhouetted against the setting sun, their presence a stark, undeniable reality. They don't move, don't speak, but their eyes follow me, a silent, unnerving acknowledgement. It's a silent assertion of their presence, a clear indication that I am seen, that I am known, that my life is no longer my own. The air crackles with an unspoken tension, a silent promise of what is to come, a future I am now irrevocably bound to. I get into my car, my movements stiff and mechanical, my mind racing, trying to process this new, terrifying development. They didn't approach me, didn't speak to me, but their message was clear. I am under surveillance. I am being watched. The simple act of driving home, once a mundane part of my day, now feels like an escape, a desperate flight from an unseen pursuer. My rearview mirror becomes a source of anxiety. Every car that follows me for too long sends a jolt of fear through my system. The freedom I once took for granted, the anonymity of my quiet life, has been stripped away, leaving me exposed and vulnerable, a pawn in a game I don't understand. As I pull into my driveway, the familiar comfort of my home offers little solace. The two black SUVs are gone, but their image is burned into my mind, a constant reminder of the encroaching darkness. I lock the doors, draw the curtains, and turn on every light in the house, desperate to push back the shadows, to reclaim some semblance of safety. But the feeling of being watched persists, a prickling sensation on the back of my neck, a chilling awareness that my sanctuary has been breached, its walls no longer offering protection. The quiet solitude I once cherished now feels like an isolating prison, a place where my fears can fester and grow unchecked, amplifying the sense of impending doom. The night passes in a blur of restless sleep and waking nightmares. Every rustle of leaves outside, every creak of the house sends me bolt upright in bed, my heart hammering. I try to convince myself it's just paranoia, a natural reaction to a traumatic event, but deep down, I know it's more than that. This isn't just a random act of violence, it's something far more organized, far more sinister. The man I saved, the man who claimed me, is clearly a figure of significant power, a man whose reach extends far beyond the confines of a crashed SUV on a rural road. His words, "Now you belong to me," are no longer just a threat. They are a chilling reality, a new chapter in my life that has begun without my consent. The next morning, a pristine, unmarked envelope appears in my mailbox. My hands tremble as I open it, my fingers fumbling with the seal. Inside, there's a single, elegantly printed card with an address and a time. No name, no explanation, just a stark, undeniable summons. The paper is thick, expensive, and the ink is a deep, rich black, exuding an air of understated authority. It's not an invitation, it's a command, a silent order that leaves no room for refusal. My stomach clenches, a knot of dread tightening in my gut. This is it, I realize. The moment of reckoning. The moment I must face the man I saved, the man who now believes he owns me, and confront the terrifying reality of my new, unwanted allegiance. I consider ignoring it, throwing the card away, pretending it never arrived. But the image of the two men in the black SUV flashes in my mind. Their impassive faces, their watchful eyes. I know, with a chilling certainty, that ignoring this summons is not an option. There would be consequences, repercussions far more severe than simply showing up. My quiet life, my small world, has been irrevocably altered, and I am now caught in a web of power and influence that I don't understand. A game with rules I don't know, and stakes I can only begin to imagine. The choice, if it can even be called that, is not whether to go, but how to survive what awaits me there. How to navigate this treacherous new landscape. The address leads me to a sprawling, modern mansion nestled deep in the hills, far from the familiar landmarks of my small town. It's a fortress of glass and steel, surrounded by manicured lawns and towering security gates, a stark contrast to the rustic charm of my own cottage. My old sedan looks utterly out of place in the circular driveway, dwarfed by the imposing architecture and the silent, watchful cameras that seem to follow my every move. My heart pounds a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a drumbeat of fear and apprehension. This is not a place for teachers, for ordinary people. This is a place of power, of secrets, of a world I never knew existed, a world I am now unwillingly a part of. As I step out of my car, the air feels heavy, charged with an unspoken tension. The silence is profound, broken only by the distant chirping of birds and the faint rustle of leaves in the breeze. A heavy, ornate door swings open silently, revealing a tall, imposing man in a dark suit, his expression unreadable. He gestures for me to enter, his eyes dark and piercing, holding my gaze for a moment too long, a silent acknowledgement of my presence, of my new status. I swallow hard, my throat suddenly dry, and step across the threshold, leaving behind the last vestiges of my old life, walking into an unknown future, a future dictated by a man I barely know, a future I am now bound to. The interior of the mansion is a study in minimalist luxury. Polished marble floors, abstract art adorning the walls, and sleek modern furniture. It's cold, impersonal, yet undeniably opulent, a testament to immense wealth and power. I'm led through a series of cavernous rooms, my footsteps echoing in the silence, until we reach a large sunlit office overlooking a vast, manicured garden. And there he is, the man from the crash, seated behind a massive dark wood desk, his arm in a sling, a faint scar visible on his temple. He looks stronger, more composed, his eyes still holding that unsettling intensity, that predatory glint that sent shivers down my spine on the rural road. He gestures to a chair opposite his desk, a silent command that I instinctively obey. My hands are clasped tightly in my lap, my knuckles white, my gaze fixed on his face, searching for any hint of the delirium I had hoped was responsible for his words. But there is none. Only a calm, unwavering resolve, a quiet authority that permeates the room. He watches me, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips, as if enjoying my discomfort, my fear. The air is thick with unspoken questions, with the weight of his declaration, with the terrifying reality of my new, unwanted connection to this powerful, dangerous man. The silence stretches, taut and suffocating, before he finally speaks, his voice a low, resonant rumble. "Thank you for coming, Miss Davies," he says, his voice smooth, devoid of the gravelly pain from the night of the crash. "I knew you would." His words are not a question, but a statement of fact, a confirmation of his absolute certainty, his unwavering belief in his own power. My name, spoken by him, sounds foreign, almost alien, as if it no longer belongs to me, but to him. The casual confidence in his tone, the way he assumes my compliance, sends a fresh wave of dread through me. This is not a man who asks. This is a man who takes, and he has taken me. The realization settles in my bones, cold and heavy, a truth I can no longer deny, a fate I can no longer escape. The silence that follows his statement is deafening, punctuated only by the rhythmic ticking of an unseen clock somewhere in the opulent room. I try to find my voice, to articulate the outrage, the fear, the sheer absurdity of his claim, but the words catch in my throat, strangled by the weight of his presence. He leans back in his chair, his dark eyes never leaving mine, a silent challenge in their depths. It's a power play, I realize, a subtle assertion of dominance, and I am acutely aware of my disadvantage, my vulnerability in this gilded cage. The air crackles with an unspoken tension, a silent battle of wills that I am clearly losing, my resolve crumbling under his unwavering gaze. "I don't understand," I finally manage to stammer, my voice barely a whisper, betraying the tremor in my hands. "What do you mean, I belong to you?" The question hangs in the air, fragile and desperate, a plea for clarification, for an explanation that might somehow unravel this terrifying new reality. He merely smiles, a slow, deliberate curve of his lips that doesn't quite reach his eyes, a smile that is more chilling than reassuring. It's a smile that speaks of secrets, of hidden agendas, of a world where words hold a different weight, where debts are paid in ways I can't yet comprehend, a world far removed from the simple truths of my classroom. "You saved my life, Miss Davies," he says, his voice still smooth, almost hypnotic. "A life is a debt, and debts must be paid. In my world, a life for a life, or rather, a life for a service. You rendered a service of immeasurable value. Now, I will ensure you are compensated." The word compensated hangs in the air, heavy with unspoken implications, a veiled threat rather than a promise of reward. It's not about money, I realize with a sickening lurch. It's about control, about ownership, about a transaction far more profound and terrifying than any financial exchange. My act of kindness has been twisted into a binding contract, a chain forged in the darkness of a rural road. He then proceeds to lay out the terms, not as a negotiation, but as a decree. I am to be his asset, a person he can call upon, a resource to be utilized. My life, my skills, my very existence are now at his disposal. There will be no violence, he assures me, no direct harm, but my cooperation is non-negotiable. He speaks of favors, of information, of discreet assistance, all vague terms that fill me with a growing sense of dread. The details are deliberately ambiguous, leaving me to imagine the worst, to fill in the terrifying blanks with my own fears. The weight of his words presses down on me, suffocating, leaving me gasping for air in this luxurious, yet utterly terrifying prison. "You will continue your life as normal," he explains, his eyes still fixed on mine. "Your teaching, your routines. But when I call, you answer. When I ask, you provide. Your discretion is paramount. Your loyalty, now, is to me." The casual way he dismisses my entire existence, reducing it to a mere facade, a cover for his unknown machinations, sends a cold wave of anger through me, quickly followed by a fresh surge of fear. Loyalty. The word echoes in my mind, a heavy, unbreakable chain. How can I be loyal to a man who has stolen my freedom, who has turned my act of compassion into a life sentence? The moral dilemma is crushing, a heavy burden on my conscience. I try to argue, to protest, to reclaim some semblance of my autonomy. "I'm a teacher," I say, my voice trembling but firm. "I have a life, responsibilities. I can't just drop everything for whatever this is." He merely raises an eyebrow, a subtle gesture that silences me more effectively than any shouted command. His gaze hardens, a flicker of something dangerous in his eyes, a silent warning that my defiance will not be tolerated. The message is clear. My responsibilities, my life, are now secondary to his demands. My protests are futile, my arguments meaningless in the face of his absolute power, his unwavering conviction that he now owns me. "Your responsibilities are now aligned with mine, Miss Davies," he states, his voice losing its smooth edge, becoming sharper, more authoritative. "And your life, as you so eloquently put it, is now intertwined with mine. You will find that my protection, my resources, can be quite beneficial, but only if you understand your new position. The veiled threat is unmistakable, a chilling reminder that while he promises no direct harm, the consequences of non-compliance could be far-reaching, affecting not just me, but potentially those I care about. The implication hangs heavy in the air, a silent promise of ruin should I choose to resist, a terrifying glimpse into the true nature of his world. He then dismisses me, a curt nod of his head, a silent command to leave. As I walk out of the mansion, the sun feels too bright, the air too thin. The world outside, once a place of comfort and familiarity, now seems alien, tainted by the shadow of his claim. My mind races, trying to comprehend the enormity of what has just transpired, the irreversible shift in my existence. I am no longer just a teacher. I am an unwilling pawn, a piece on a chessboard I didn't even know existed, controlled by a powerful, dangerous hand. The weight of this new reality presses down on me, a suffocating burden that threatens to crush my spirit. to erase the very essence of who I am. Days turn into weeks, and the initial panic slowly gives way to a gnawing anxiety, a constant undercurrent of fear that permeates every aspect of my life. I try to maintain my routine, to project an air of normalcy, but it's a constant struggle. Every phone call, every unexpected knock at the door sends a jolt of fear through me. I find myself constantly looking over my shoulder, scanning crowds, convinced that his watchful eyes, or the eyes of his silent enforcers, are always upon me. The freedom I once cherished, the simple joy of anonymity, has been replaced by a pervasive sense of surveillance, a chilling awareness that my every move is being monitored, my every action judged. Then, the first call comes. It's a burner phone, delivered discreetly to my mailbox, a silent, untraceable link to his world. The voice on the other end is not his, but a calm, professional tone, giving me precise instructions. I am to deliver a package, a small, unassuming envelope, to a specific address in a neighboring town. No questions, no deviations, just follow the instructions. My heart pounds against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of fear, but I know I have no choice. The weight of his claim, the unspoken threat of his power, compels me to obey, to step into the shadows, to become an unwilling participant in his clandestine operations. The line between right and wrong blurs, obscured by the fog of fear and self-preservation. The package delivery is uneventful, almost mundane, which only adds to the unsettling nature of the task. The recipient is a nondescript man in a quiet cafe who takes the envelope without a word, his eyes meeting mine for a fleeting moment, a silent acknowledgement of the transaction. I feel like a ghost, moving through the world unseen, unheard, a silent courier of secrets. The ease with which I complete the task, the lack of drama, is more terrifying than any overt threat. It shows the efficiency, the quiet power of his organization, their ability to operate seamlessly in the mundane world, their reach extending into every corner of ordinary life, making me question everything I thought I knew. The calls become more frequent, the tasks more varied, though always seemingly innocuous on the surface. I find myself driving to remote locations, leaving messages in dead drops, observing people from a distance, gathering seemingly trivial information. Each task, no matter how small, feels like a betrayal of my own principles, a further entanglement in a web of deceit and hidden agendas. The moral compromises chip away at my conscience, leaving me feeling hollowed out, a shadow of my former self. The line between my life as a teacher and my life as his asset blurs, the two worlds slowly merging into a single, terrifying reality, a constant tightrope walk between normalcy and danger. One evening, after delivering a coded message to a contact in a dimly lit restaurant, I see him, the man from the crash. He's seated at a secluded table, surrounded by his silent enforcers, his gaze sweeping over the room with an almost imperceptible intensity. Our eyes meet across the crowded room, and a faint, knowing smile touches his lips, a silent acknowledgement of my presence, of my compliance. It's a chilling reminder that he is always watching, always aware, always in control. The encounter is brief, silent, yet it speaks volumes, reaffirming his ownership, his power, and my unwilling servitude. The air grows heavy, charged with an unspoken tension, a silent promise of what is to come. The incident leaves me shaken, a fresh wave of fear washing over me. His presence, his silent acknowledgement, reinforces the terrifying reality of my situation. I am not just an anonymous courier. I am known, seen, and utterly at his mercy. The illusion of my normal life, the carefully constructed facade, feels thinner than ever, threatening to shatter at any moment. The weight of his claim, the constant anxiety of his demands, begins to take its toll, manifesting in sleepless nights, a loss of appetite, and a pervasive sense of dread that clings to me like a second skin. My life has become a performance, a constant act of deception, and the strain is becoming unbearable. I start to notice subtle changes in my surroundings, small details that were once invisible to me. The way certain cars seem to linger outside my house, the same faces appearing in different places, the quiet hum of surveillance equipment I imagine hidden in the shadows. My paranoia grows, feeding on the constant uncertainty, the knowledge that I am living a double life, a secret existence that could unravel at any moment. The world, once a place of simple pleasures, now feels like a labyrinth of hidden dangers, a stage where every interaction is a potential trap, every stranger a possible threat. The innocence of my former life has been irrevocably lost, replaced by a cynical awareness of the darkness that lurks beneath the surface. The moral compromises become harder to bear. I find myself questioning every decision, every interaction, wondering if I am inadvertently aiding something truly terrible. The line between right and wrong, once so clear, is now a murky, shifting boundary. I am caught between the fear of his retribution and the gnawing guilt of my complicity. The weight of my actions, however small, presses down on me, a heavy burden on my conscience. I am no longer just a victim. I am an unwilling participant, a silent accomplice, and the realization is a bitter pill to swallow. The path I chose, the path of saving a life, has led me down a dark and treacherous road, one from which there seems to be no return. The next summons arrives not as a card, but as a direct, chilling message on the burner phone. Be ready, tonight. My heart leaps into my throat, a frantic bird trapped in my chest, as a cold dread washes over me. This isn't another package delivery, another innocuous observation. The tone is different, sharper, more urgent, hinting at something far more significant, far more dangerous. The air in my small cottage feels heavy, suffocating, as if the walls themselves are closing in, trapping me in this terrifying new reality. My hands tremble as I grip the phone, the plastic cold and impersonal against my clammy skin, a stark reminder of the invisible chains that bind me. As darkness falls, a black SUV, different from the previous ones, pulls up silently outside my house. Two new faces, equally impassive and formidable, emerge from the vehicle. They don't speak, don't gesture, simply wait by the passenger door, their presence a silent command. I know, with a chilling certainty, that resistance is futile. This is not a request. It's an extraction. My carefully constructed facade of normalcy, my quiet life as a teacher, is about to be shattered, irrevocably. I take a deep, shaky breath, grab my small handbag, and step out into the cold night, leaving behind the last vestiges of my old life, walking into an unknown, terrifying ordeal. The drive is long, silent, and tense. We leave the familiar roads of my town, venturing deeper into the rural landscape, past darkened fields and dense forests. The only sound is the low hum of the engine and the frantic beat of my own heart, a drumbeat of pure terror echoing in my ears. I try to catch a glimpse of our destination, but the windows are tinted, and the darkness outside offers no clues. My mind races, conjuring every possible scenario, each one more terrifying than the last. What could be so important that they would pull me from my home in the dead of night? What kind of service could I, a simple teacher, possibly provide in this clandestine world? We finally arrive at a sprawling, abandoned industrial warehouse, its skeletal frame silhouetted against the sliver of moon. The air is thick with the smell of damp concrete and decay, a chilling atmosphere that speaks of forgotten industry and hidden dealings. Inside, the vast space is dimly lit by a few bare bulbs, casting long, dancing shadows that distort the figures moving within. My stomach clenches, a knot of dread tightening in my gut. This is not a place for mundane tasks. This is a place where serious business is conducted, where lives are decided, where the true nature of his world is laid bare. The cold, metallic scent of the place seems to seep into my very bones. And there he is, the man from the crash, standing in the center of the warehouse, surrounded by a dozen or so men, all dressed in dark, expensive suits. His arm is no longer in a sling, but he carries himself with a quiet authority, his gaze sharp and commanding. He sees me, and a faint, almost imperceptible nod acknowledges my arrival. My breath catches in my throat, a sudden, sharp pain in my chest. The air crackles with an unspoken tension, a palpable sense of anticipation that makes my skin crawl. I am a lamb led to slaughter, I think, a pawn in a game far beyond my comprehension, and the realization is a bitter, terrifying truth. He begins to speak, his voice low and resonant, but I can't quite make out the words. My attention is drawn to a figure tied to a chair in the corner of the warehouse, a man whose face is bruised and battered, his clothes torn. It's the authority compromised, I realize with a sickening lurch, the politician or judge or businessman who had allied himself with this dangerous world. He looks broken, defeated, his eyes wide with terror. A wave of nausea washes over me, a visceral reaction to the raw brutality of the scene. This is the reality of his world, I understand now, a world where loyalty is demanded and betrayal is met with swift, unforgiving retribution. Then, his eyes meet mine again, and he gestures for me to approach. My legs feel like lead, each step an agonizing effort, but I obey, drawn forward by an invisible force, a silent compulsion I cannot resist. As I get closer, I can hear his words clearly now. He is interrogating the bound man, his voice calm, almost conversational, yet laced with an undeniable menace. He is asking about a ledger, a list of names, of transactions, of secrets that could bring down an empire. The stakes are incredibly high, I realize, far higher than I could have ever imagined. My presence here is not accidental. It is deliberate, a calculated move in a dangerous game. He turns to me, his eyes piercing, and a chilling smile plays on his lips. "Miss Davies," he says, his voice carrying across the cavernous space, "you have a unique perspective. You are an outsider, yet you have seen enough to understand the gravity of this situation. Tell me, what do you see in his eyes?" He gestures to the bound man, who looks up at me, his eyes pleading, desperate. My mind races, trying to comprehend his intent. Is this a test? A cruel game? Or does he genuinely believe I possess some insight, some ability to discern truth from deception? The pressure is immense, the weight of a man's life hanging in the balance, and I am utterly unprepared. My gaze flickers between the two men, the interrogator and the interrogated, the predator and the prey. I see fear in the bound man's eyes, yes, but also something else, a flicker of defiance, a stubborn refusal to break. He is holding something back, I realize, some crucial piece of information he is desperate to protect. The air is thick with the smell of fear and desperation, a visceral cocktail that makes my stomach churn. My heart pounds against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of pure terror, as I try to formulate an answer that could determine the fate of this man, and perhaps my own. The silence stretches, taut and suffocating, as all eyes turn to me, waiting for my verdict. He's afraid, I say, my voice surprisingly steady, but he's also protecting something, or someone. The words tumble out, an instinctive observation, a gut feeling rather than a reasoned analysis. The man from the crash studies my face, his expression unreadable, a silent assessment of my response. The bound man's eyes widen, a flicker of surprise, then a renewed sense of desperation. I have confirmed his secret, I realize, inadvertently sealing his fate, and a wave of guilt washes over me, cold and heavy. I am a tool in his hands, an unwitting accomplice, and the realization is a bitter, terrifying truth. A slow smile spreads across the man's face, a smile that sends a shiver down my spine. "Very good, Miss Davies," he says, his voice laced with a chilling satisfaction. "Very astute." He then turns back to the bound man, his expression hardening, his voice dropping to a low, menacing tone. "You heard her. Now tell me about the ledger, and about your family." The mention of family sends a fresh wave of terror through the bound man, his defiance finally crumbling, replaced by a desperate, guttural sob. My stomach churns, a knot of nausea tightening in my gut. I have just witnessed, and inadvertently facilitated, a brutal act of coercion, a violation of everything I believe in. The scene that unfolds next is a blur of hushed commands, frantic whispers, and the chilling sound of a man breaking under pressure. The bound man reveals the location of the ledger, a hidden compartment in his study, and the names of those he was protecting. My role is over, but the images are burned into my mind, the sounds echoing in my ears, a testament to the darkness I have now witnessed, the darkness I have become a part of. I stand there, a silent observer, feeling utterly helpless, utterly complicit. My hands stained not with blood, but with the knowledge of a man's broken spirit, a man's betrayal. The weight of this experience presses down on me, suffocating, leaving me gasping for air. He dismisses me with another curt nod, his eyes holding a new, unsettling respect, a silent acknowledgement of my unwilling participation. As I am led out of the warehouse, the cold night air feels like a slap in the face, a stark contrast to the suffocating tension within. I get back into the SUV, my body trembling, my mind reeling from the events I have just witnessed. The silence of the return journey is even heavier than before, filled with the unspoken horrors of the night, the chilling reality of his world. I am no longer just an unwilling asset. I am a witness, a confidant, a keeper of dangerous secrets, and the realization is a terrifying, inescapable truth. Back in my cottage, the familiar surroundings offer no comfort. The walls seem to mock me, their warmth a stark contrast to the cold brutality of the warehouse. I try to sleep, but the images flash behind my eyelids. The sounds echo in my ears. A relentless torment. The man's pleading eyes, his broken sobs, his desperate surrender. They haunt me. A constant reminder of my complicity, my unwilling role in his downfall. The moral compromises I have made, the lines I have crossed, weigh heavily on my conscience, leaving me feeling hollowed out, a shadow of my former self. My life has been irrevocably altered, and the innocence I once cherished is now a distant, unattainable memory. The next morning, the news reports a prominent local businessman, a respected figure in the community, has been arrested on charges of corruption and embezzlement. The details are vague, the sources anonymous, but I know the truth. I know the ledger. I know the names. I know the secrets that brought him down. A cold knot of dread tightens in my gut. This is the consequence of my actions, the ripple effect of my unwilling participation. The world I thought I knew, the world of justice and law, is now revealed to be a fragile facade, easily manipulated by the unseen forces that operate in the shadows, forces I am now inextricably linked to. The weight of this knowledge is immense, a suffocating burden that isolates me even further. I can't confide in anyone, can't share the terrifying truth of my double life. The secret is mine alone, a heavy chain that binds me to a world of danger and deceit. My interactions with my students, once a source of joy and fulfillment, now feel tainted, my smile artificial, my reassurances hollow. How can I teach them about right and wrong when my own life has become a tapestry of moral compromises? The hypocrisy gnaws at me, a constant painful reminder of the person I once was and the person I am slowly becoming. The aftermath of the warehouse incident leaves me in a state of profound emotional exhaustion, a constant hum of anxiety vibrating beneath my skin. The fear is no longer a sudden jolt, but a dull, persistent ache, a constant companion that shadows my every step. I try to immerse myself in my teaching, in the comforting predictability of lesson plans and children's laughter, but the images of the bound man, his broken spirit, his desperate surrender, flash unbidden in my mind. My classroom, once a sanctuary, now feels like a fragile bubble, easily burst by the encroaching darkness of his world, a world I am now inextricably linked to, a world that demands my silent complicity. Days bleed into weeks, and the calls from the burner phone continue, though the tasks are less dramatic, more in line with the initial favors. I am back to being a silent courier, a discreet observer, a ghost moving through the periphery of his operations. But now, every task carries the weight of what I witnessed in the warehouse, the chilling understanding of the consequences of failure, of betrayal. The stakes are higher, the shadows deeper, and my sense of vulnerability is amplified by the knowledge of the brutal power that underpins his world. My life has become a constant tightrope walk, a precarious balance between maintaining a facade of normalcy and navigating the treacherous currents of his demands. I start to notice a subtle shift in the way his enforcers interact with me. The initial impassiveness has softened, replaced by a quiet deference, a subtle acknowledgement of my new, albeit unwilling, status. They still don't speak, but their gazes hold a flicker of something akin to respect, a silent recognition of my role in the warehouse, my ability to discern truth from deception. It's a chilling development, a further entanglement in his web, as if my unwilling participation has somehow earned me a place, however small and terrifying, within his inner circle. The thought sends a fresh wave of dread through me, a sickening realization that I am becoming more than just an asset. I am becoming a part of his world. One afternoon, a different black SUV pulls up to my cottage. This time, it's not the silent enforcers, but a woman. She's impeccably dressed, her movements fluid and graceful, her face beautiful but unreadable, her eyes sharp and intelligent. She introduces herself as Elena, her voice low and cultured, and informs me that she is now my primary contact. Her presence is a stark contrast to the silent men, a new layer of sophistication and intrigue in his operations. She speaks in veiled terms, her words carefully chosen, hinting at a deeper, more complex network of power and influence, a world far more intricate than I had initially imagined. Elena's tasks are different too. She asks me to observe social gatherings, to gather information on specific individuals, to subtly influence conversations. It's a more refined form of espionage, a game of whispers and glances, of unspoken alliances and hidden agendas. My skills as a teacher, my ability to read people, to understand subtle cues, are now being exploited for his purposes. The moral compromises become even more insidious as I find myself manipulating social situations, betraying confidences, all under the guise of polite conversation. The line between my identity as a teacher and my role as his asset blurs further, threatening to erase the very essence of who I am. The psychological toll is immense. I find myself constantly analyzing every interaction, every word, every gesture, searching for hidden meanings, for ulterior motives. The world becomes a stage, and everyone in it a potential player in his game. Trust, once a fundamental aspect of my relationships, becomes a luxury I can no longer afford. I withdraw from my friends, from my colleagues, unable to share the terrifying truth of my double life, unable to reconcile the person they see with the person I am slowly becoming. The isolation is profound, a heavy burden that weighs on my spirit, leaving me feeling utterly alone in this dangerous, clandestine world. One evening, Elena summons me to a discreet cafe in a bustling part of the city. The atmosphere is vibrant, filled with the chatter of patrons and the clinking of coffee cups, a stark contrast to the quiet menace of the warehouse. She sits across from me, her gaze piercing, her expression unreadable. She tells me that a rival faction is making a move, attempting to undermine his authority, to seize control of certain territories. The tension in the air is palpable, a silent acknowledgement of the escalating conflict, the impending storm. My heart pounds against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of fear, as I realize that I am now caught in the crossfire of a power struggle far beyond my comprehension. He needs you to be his eyes and ears, Elena explains, her voice low and urgent. To observe, to report, to identify potential threats. Your anonymity is your greatest asset, Miss Davies. No one suspects the quiet teacher. Her words are a chilling reminder of my vulnerability, my unwitting role as a pawn in a dangerous game. My ordinary life, my unassuming profession, is now my most valuable weapon, a cloak of invisibility that allows me to move through the shadows undetected. The irony is not lost on me. The very qualities that once defined my peaceful existence are now being twisted and exploited for purposes I never imagined. The tasks become more dangerous, the stakes higher. I find myself in situations that push the boundaries of my courage, my moral compass spinning wildly. I observe clandestine meetings in dimly lit restaurants, listen in on hushed conversations in crowded parks, and even, on one terrifying occasion, plant a small, discreet listening device in a rival's office. Each act is a violation of my own principles, a further descent into the murky depths of his world. The fear is constant, a cold knot in my stomach, but it is slowly being replaced by a strange, unsettling sense of resignation, a grim acceptance of my new, unwanted reality. One night, as I am observing a rival's associate at a high-stakes poker game, I see him, the man from the crash. He is seated at a private table, his back to me, but his presence is unmistakable, radiating an aura of quiet power. He is engaged in a tense conversation with a man I recognize as a prominent figure in the rival faction. The air crackles with unspoken threats, with the weight of a looming conflict. My heart pounds against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of pure terror, as I realize that I am witnessing a pivotal moment, a confrontation that could determine the fate of his empire, and by extension, my own. Suddenly, a commotion erupts at the table. Voices are raised, chairs are overturned, and a brief, violent struggle ensues. My breath catches in my throat, a sudden sharp pain in my chest. I duck behind a potted plant, my body trembling, my mind racing. When I dare to look again, the rival figure is gone, and the man from the crash is standing over the table, his expression grim, his eyes cold and unwavering. His silent enforcers move quickly, efficiently, restoring order, their movements precise and practiced. The incident is swift, brutal, and utterly terrifying, a stark reminder of the violence that underpins his world, the ruthlessness with which he maintains his power. I report the incident to Elena, my voice trembling, my hands shaking. She listens calmly, her expression unreadable, her eyes betraying no emotion. "He is sending a message," she says, her voice low and steady, a clear warning to those who would challenge him. Her words send a fresh wave of dread through me, a chilling realization that I am now a direct witness to his brutality, a silent confidant to his violent methods. The moral compromises I have made, the lines I have crossed, now feel insignificant in the face of the raw, undeniable power he wields, the absolute control he exerts over his world, and by extension, over mine. The incident leaves me deeply shaken, the illusion of my normal life shattered beyond repair. I am no longer just an unwilling asset. I am a participant, a witness, a keeper of dangerous secrets, and the realization is a terrifying, inescapable truth. The fear is no longer just for myself, but for those I care about, for the innocent lives that could be caught in the crossfire of his power struggles. The weight of this new reality presses down on me, suffocating, leaving me gasping for air. My life has been irrevocably altered, and the path I chose, the path of saving a life, has led me down a dark and treacherous road, one from which there seems to be no return, a road where my fate is no longer my own. The ambiguity of my situation is the most terrifying aspect. I am not a prisoner, not overtly, but I am not free either. I exist in a liminal space, caught between two worlds, belonging to neither. The man from the crash, my unwilling owner, remains a distant, enigmatic figure. His presence felt more than seen, his power absolute. I am a ghost in my own life, moving through the motions, teaching my students, smiling at my colleagues, all the while carrying the heavy burden of his claim, the chilling knowledge of my unwilling servitude. The future is uncertain, shrouded in shadows, and I am left to wonder what new horrors await me, what further moral compromises I will be forced to make, what ultimate price I will have to pay for saving a life. The quiet returns, but it's a different kind of quiet now, one laced with the memory of violence. My life resumes its outward rhythm, but inwardly, I am a fractured landscape. The incident at the poker game, the swift brutality, has etched itself onto my soul, a permanent scar that throbs with every beat of my heart. I teach my classes, I grade papers, I smile at parents, but it all feels like a performance, a meticulously crafted illusion to hide the terrifying truth of my double life. The innocence I once possessed is gone, replaced by a cynical awareness of the darkness that lurks beneath the surface of polite society, a darkness I am now inextricably bound to. The weight of his claim, the unspoken threats, the constant surveillance, they are all part of my new normal, a suffocating blanket that smothers any hope of true freedom. Elena's visits become more frequent, her presence a constant reminder of my unwilling servitude. She speaks of restructuring, of new opportunities for me within the organization. Her words are always carefully chosen, devoid of overt threats, yet laden with an implicit understanding of the consequences of refusal. She presents me with files, with names, with intricate details of financial transactions and political maneuverings. My role is evolving, shifting from a mere courier to something more akin to an analyst, a silent observer who pieces together fragments of information, drawing connections that even his most trusted men might miss. My intelligence, once used for lesson plans, is now a tool in his dangerous game, a weapon wielded by an unseen hand. I find myself developing a strange, unsettling proficiency in this new role. My mind, once focused on the nuances of literature and history, now dissects human behavior, identifies vulnerabilities, and anticipates reactions. It's a skill born of necessity, a survival mechanism in a world where missteps can have fatal consequences. I learn to read the subtle cues, the unspoken language of power and fear that permeates his world. The moral ambiguity of my actions gnaws at me, but the instinct for self-preservation, the primal need to survive, overrides the protests of my conscience. I am becoming good at this, I realize with a chilling sense of detachment, and the thought terrifies me more than any direct threat. The line between my two lives, once distinct, now blurs into an indistinguishable haze. My students' innocent questions about justice and fairness feel like a cruel mockery of my own reality. How can I teach them about integrity when my own life is a tapestry of deceit? The guilt is a constant companion, a heavy stone in my stomach, yet I continue to play my part, to wear the mask of the dedicated teacher, all the while knowing the dark secrets I carry beneath the surface. The isolation deepens, as I find myself unable to connect with anyone, trapped in a gilded cage of my own making, a prisoner of my own unwilling complicity. One day, Elena presents me with a file that makes my blood run cold. It contains detailed information about a local politician, a man known for his unwavering integrity, his commitment to his community. He is a vocal opponent of the very forces I am now serving, a beacon of hope in a world I increasingly see as corrupt. My task? To find a weakness, a vulnerability, something that can be exploited to silence him, to neutralize his influence. The request is a direct assault on everything I believe in, a demand to actively participate in the corruption I despise. My hands tremble as I hold the file, the paper feeling heavy with the weight of its sinister implications. I spend days poring over the file, searching for an alternative, a way to fulfill the request without betraying my last vestiges of morality. I look for loopholes, for misinterpretations, for anything that could spare this man from the fate I know awaits him if I succeed. But his life is an open book, his integrity unblemished, his commitment unwavering. The more I dig, the more I realize the depth of his honesty, the purity of his intentions. The task feels like a test, a final push to see if I will fully embrace the darkness, if I will finally shed the last remnants of my former self. The pressure is immense, the moral dilemma crushing, a battle for my very soul. I consider refusing, defying his command, accepting the consequences, whatever they may be. But the image of the bound man in the warehouse, his broken spirit, his desperate surrender, flashes in my mind. I remember the cold certainty in his eyes, the absolute power he wields, the ruthlessness with which he eliminates obstacles. The fear is a visceral, primal force, a cold hand gripping my heart, reminding me of the futility of resistance. I am trapped, a pawn in a game where the rules are set by a ruthless master, and my only choice is to play along, or be crushed. The weight of this realization is suffocating, leaving me gasping for air. I return to Elena, the file still in my hand, my face a mask of carefully constructed neutrality. "There is nothing," I say, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "He is clean. His life is an open book." Elena studies me, her eyes piercing, searching for any hint of deception, any flicker of defiance. The silence stretches, taut and suffocating, as she weighs my words, her expression unreadable. I hold my breath, my heart pounding against my ribs, convinced that this is the moment my fragile facade will crumble, the moment my defiance will be met with swift, unforgiving retribution. A slow smile spreads across her lips, a smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. "Interesting," she murmurs, her voice low and thoughtful. "Perhaps his greatest weakness is his strength, his integrity, his unwavering commitment to his ideals. A man like that can be manipulated." My blood runs cold. I had hoped my report would spare him, but instead it has only provided a new avenue for his destruction. My attempt to protect him has inadvertently sealed his fate, turning his virtues into vulnerabilities. The realization is a bitter, sickening truth, a testament to the insidious nature of their power, their ability to twist even the purest intentions into tools for their own gain. The next day, the news reports a scandal involving the politician, a fabricated story of financial impropriety, a carefully constructed web of lies designed to tarnish his reputation, to undermine his credibility. My stomach churns, a knot of nausea tightening in my gut. I know, with a chilling certainty, that my report, my unwitting analysis of his strength, was used to craft this insidious attack. I am complicit, an accessory to the destruction of an honest man, and the guilt is a heavy, suffocating burden that threatens to crush my spirit. The lines I have crossed are now so numerous, so blurred, that I can barely recognize the person I once was. The politician's career is ruined, his reputation in tatters, his voice silenced. The victory is swift, clean, and utterly devastating. I watch from a distance, a silent observer, feeling the weight of my complicity, the crushing burden of my unwilling participation in this act of moral assassination. The world, once a place of clear distinctions between right and wrong, is now a murky, treacherous landscape, where truth is a malleable commodity, and integrity is a weakness to be exploited. My own moral compass spins wildly, unable to find true north in this new, terrifying reality. My life continues, outwardly unchanged, but inwardly, I am a different person. The fear is still there, a constant companion, but it is now intertwined with a profound sense of loss, a deep-seated regret for the person I once was, the ideals I once held dear. I am a survivor, yes, but at what cost? The man from the crash, my unwilling owner, remains a distant, enigmatic figure, his power absolute, his reach seemingly limitless. I am bound to him, a silent shadow in his dangerous world, forever marked by the choices I was forced to make, the compromises I was forced to accept. The future stretches before me, a long, uncertain road, paved with secrets and moral ambiguities. As I sit in my classroom surrounded by the innocent faces of my students, I wonder if they can see it, the darkness that now resides within me, the shadow of his claim. I wonder if they can sense the secrets I carry, the heavy burden of my double life. I smile, I teach, I pretend. But the truth is, I am no longer just a teacher. I am a ghost in my own life, a silent participant in a dangerous game, forever bound to the man who said, "Now you belong to me." The words echo in my mind, a chilling reminder of my new reality, a reality from which there seems to be no escape, a reality that has irrevocably claimed my soul.